Hello, guys, and welcome back to Bright Founders Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. You can see me just laughing at the beginning of our podcast there, guys, because Rob made me laugh there. I asked him, Rob or Robert. If I'm angry, we call him Robert. Rob, if not. So all good. So Rob Murray, CEO and co-founder of Intrigue, empowering leaders to strengthen communities and so much more than a marketing company. Rob, to get things started, just tell us in a couple of words, a couple of sentences, what is it you do there at Intrigue?
Sure, yeah. So our core focus is quality lead generation for entrepreneurs in the home improvement and construction space.
Nice. Good.
And there's a lot of tools we use for that, but that's kind of the main kind of group of folks that we help.
Mm-hmm. So on your description, you've got navigator, motivator, and coach. My responsibility is to help direct the vision of Intrigue and ensure that we have the right people and organization with the right tools to get us there. Why navigator? Where would you say your skills are in navigating?
Well, I mean, like, I think, as a leader inside an organization, one of our jobs is to be able to see the future in terms of like the direction of the company. And so we've got a pretty clear direction at this point in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. Like our goal is to build a bunch of like niche specialized marketing companies within the infrastructure of a larger company so that we can actually serve entrepreneurs better than they get served the way it is today. A lot of like marketing done from like a brand level and enterprise level gets a lot of sophisticated approaches, very like data driven, analytical, very clear tracking mechanisms, benchmarking, data benchmarking. And so entrepreneurs between say 2, 5 million, 5, 10 million don't necessarily have access to that type of information to make it so that their marketing kicks butt. And so we're building the infrastructure of a much larger company and then specializing these niches. So one of them around home improvement construction, so we can support these folks. And so that's the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. And then bringing people on board that believe in entrepreneurship and leadership, becoming their best self. That's kind of my job in terms of making sure we got the right people on the bus, but navigating that end goal for, whatever, 2030, it's a 5-year, 10-year moving target. But I think that's a really important part of a leader so that people can see, where we're going.
Rob, I'm going to ask a few questions on this in a second about your 5-year, 10-year plan. Because I've seen in one of the videos that you do say that, I don't know when the video was recorded, but in the video it does say that you've already achieved your 5-year plan. So I'm interested in seeing where that actually has gone from to now and what kind of 5-year plan you've got from that. But before we do, I want to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
Just fire some rapid fire questions at you. So, Rob, are you a morning person?
Yeah.
I guess so now, because it's quite out of your sight, is it not?
Well, I mean, I've got 3 kids. I don't have a choice.
Great. Team or independently?
Team.
Are you a risk taker?
100%.
Work-life balance, is it important to you?
I don't believe it exists. I think it's work-life integration.
Nice. Okay. Take a mark on that. We'll definitely talk about that. Do you enjoy networking events?
Sure. With the right group.
Have you ever pivoted your business model?
Yeah, for sure. We started off in a completely different business we're in right now.
Cool.
And even so refined and niched since we've been here.
Of course. Yeah. Are you focused on more short-term goals or long-term goals?
Definitely long-term. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself a hands-on leader?
Yeah, I believe if you want to win the hearts of the people around you, you got to get in the trenches.
Nice. Are you happy with this year's success so far?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's go back to one of those questions, work-life balance. Why didn't you believe it exists? Tell me more about this.
Well, I just think there's, not to say it doesn't, I just think that there's a connotation that work-life balance means you work and then you don't work and then you have your life. Like they're not together at all. And I just think that's kind of a bit bonkers. Like if you look at everything before the Industrial Revolution, there was no such thing as work-life balance. People lived and worked. That's what you do. It's part of your life. So this idea of like, leaving your life at the door when you enter an organizational setting just doesn't fit for me. And like if you've got kids or you need to get a dentist appointment, that's usually happening during working hours. People don't need to take sick days or personal days to be able to like take care of themselves. Whereas I think in a lot of, traditional organizational settings, people have to like literally take a half day off to be able to go see a dentist, which is just bonkers. So for me, it's more about work-life integration and making sure that like I do have time for all aspects of my life, whether it's my family, myself personally, whether it's, friends or being at work itself. I think it all kind of fits together. And as long as those things as long as the priorities are getting the time that they require for them to be healthy in our lives, then things are good. And someone could argue that that is balance. So I'm not trying to say it isn't, but I also believe in like a lack of balance for short periods of time. So, sprinting a focus around my family when I had a bunch of young kids was beneficial for my life at that time. So I was probably more unbalanced, or sprinting at work. And like, when we first started Intrigue, 3 or 4 years of no vacations, working 7 days a week. Yeah, that's not balanced, but I think it was necessary and works. So, it's all, everything in moderation, even moderation is necessary.
Nice. Absolutely. So you're talking there at the first couple of years were 7 days a week, probably 24/7, constant, as it is a lot of the time in startup worlds. Let's go right back to the beginning. 16 years ago, I believe, 16, if I'm correct. Yep. Where and why did it all happen? When and why did it all start?
It was very happenstance. My business partner, Paul DeMarco, co-founder of Intrigue, had an idea to put up like LCD displays in between mirrors at hair salons when he was in Oshawa in a summer away from school. And we talked a little bit about it, but he was going to do it with his buddy, and it never really got anywhere. And then a few months later, we were at school at the University of Guelph, and he found somebody they could buy a TV from. And he's like, hey, do you want to buy this TV? Maybe we could sell some ads and, put it up at the University Center. I was like, sure, why not? So the original idea was just to help pay for tuition, make a little bit of extra money. But then as we started installing these televisions and engaging these local businesses and, much smaller type of clientele than we work with today, we found that they were underserved, and there was a demand to be supported. So we would install these televisions in, high traffic local consumer environments like restaurants or gyms, medical centers, as an alternative ad medium to, say, the local newspaper or radio station. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot more cost effective in terms of getting eyeballs for the price point. And we stumbled upon Future Shop, which gave us a 90-day no interest, no payment credit card for $2,500. So essentially we could buy a TV amount and whatever for $2,500. We have 90 days to sell enough advertising on it to pay for it, and then rinse and repeat. We did that 13 times, and people kept asking, why don't you put a TV up here? Why don't you put a TV in my spot? And then, about a year later, we expected to do $8,000 in our first year. We ended up doing about 25. And then, we just kind of exceeded our expectations year after year. And then we ended up selling a third of the business to an active investment company who then capitalized us. And then we brought the business to 5 different communities, franchised it. And then in 2011, started getting pulled into online marketing because all of our current customers were like, when are you guys going to start building websites? How do I get this Google thing working for me? How do I use Facebook? And so we got kind of pulled from our customer base into online marketing. And the biggest reason was because everybody wanted us to prove our worth. And digital out of home or display advertising is very difficult to prove ROI. Whereas, search ads, website tracking, email marketing, it's a lot more clear. So we started marching down that beat considerably. And now, that's, history. That was 13 years ago.
Let's talk about the world of marketing a little bit more. So how are you making sure that you're staying updated with the ever-changing kind of landscape of marketing? You're saying in one of your videos that sometimes it can be intimidating because it changes so much as well. How do you stay updated, and how are you making sure that you provide that kind of stress-free experience to all your clients?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of two questions in itself. I mean, when I recorded that video, I'm not even sure which one you're referring to. It was before AI took over the world, so the pace of change is even faster today than it was whenever that was filmed. Having a team of 30 people all responsible for things inside the organization, having them push forward is going to be part of it. But at the end of the day, like, we're getting paid for results, and so if we make a promise and those results are coming true and they're not getting off track, then we're doing something right. Changing things for the sake of change can be difficult, but maintaining what's going on in the world of marketing is also really important. But a lot of times we don't necessarily jump after the new thing just because it's new. We like to be a bit more of a second mover when it comes to adaptations to marketing and technology. because it's got to prove its ROI. We don't want to spend an entrepreneur's money on something that may or may not work and like have them pay us to experiment. So we do have a tendency to stick with tried, tested, and true mechanisms that work. But at the end of the day, marketing at its fundamentals is still about matching what somebody's doing with people that want it. And so technology is a part of it, but really there's more to the fundamentals of marketing I think a lot of people miss around positioning, strategy, not convincing people to buy your stuff, finding the people that love your stuff, and then making that your mission is to find those people instead of trying to convince the world they should buy from you. You start doing that stuff right, things get a lot easier.
Tell me about, you're talking about AI there, and obviously that's changed the game completely. Compared to those beginning days, walk me through this timeline of how much and what has changed from inception to now. Because obviously over the last year, year, maybe two, this one will be when the AI has really taken off. But before that, was all of this pretty slow for you? Was it pretty much marketing has the same kind of concept before?
Well, sure. But at the same time, like, when we started doing this, Facebook just kind of became popular. So learning how to leverage that tool, but we kind of sat back on the sidelines because it was an avalanche of energy that no one really understood how to harness. Once we started seeing it become prevalent and meaningful attention and a meaningful ad product, then we were able to jump into it. But, for us, technology, everybody thinks we're tech guys. We're not. We have some very wonderful technologists on our team, but that's just not our forte. But I would say the biggest thing is understanding like how to leverage data properly, like meaningful insights, meaning meaningful opportunities of data structure to automate our workflows and make it so that people can do their jobs. Like how can we essentially look at like where is the best work in someone's workflow that is a creative strategy type of work, and then how do we automate and use technology to support that more. That's definitely been a focus. When we first started, we were using USB sticks to update TVs across, 4 communities in Ontario and then eventually 10. And so then we had to learn how to write some scripts and use some code to, build our own platform to make it so we could update all of our TVs. And then you start getting into things like CRM and leveraging something like a Salesforce to make it so that it's really easy to be a great salesperson here. And then we have our own theme in WordPress because we don't want to be sitting there on, someone else's back, because if they didn't update something, it goes stale and doesn't get supported. So, I mean, for us, it's still really about making sure that we have the tools in place to service our core customer. And that's really the lens. It's like one of our core values is client. We exist to serve our clients. That's why we're here. We can't forget that. So as long as we're always looking through the lens of how we support our clients best, and then what technology can help us do that, that's kind of how we look at, technology. And then how are things changing? I mean, Bard and ChatGPT are massive game changers in terms of being able to do work quickly and well. Things like Midjourney or even the new designer.microsoft.com. I'm not sure if you had a chance to check that out, but these tools are still fundamental workflow things. It's not new. It's just a new way to use it. And they're amazing. So I'm not going to sit there and say they're not, but I mean, it's changing really, really fast. Getting people, and then there's also the resistance to change, right, with humans, and sometimes people have old school mentalities of whatever. So making sure that people maintain a beginner's mindset, I think, is a part of the culture that makes it easier to adopt stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Have you actually? I haven't used Bard myself. Which one do you prefer, ChatGPT or Bard?
I mean, we're in a bit of a more prevalent Google environment, so its integration with Sheets and all the tools that we use for our Google workspace, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more native. Whereas with ChatGPT, there's stuff that breaks, there's bridges that don't necessarily work all the time. But I mean, they're both really good. I'm biased, so I'd say Bard.
Okay, nice.
But we don't have access to it in Canada. We have to use a VPN to use it here.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that. Perfect.
Yeah, well, our government's a bit more rigid.
I remember seeing something on this. It was one of the first countries that banned it, and then I think Italy. But anyway, tell me, so Rob, so this is how it's changed. How do you imagine it's going to change within the next couple of years to make work processes easier?
I mean, I don't think I know how it's going to change in the next couple of years. All I know is that the rote work isn't something that humans need to worry about anymore. So we're in a creative economy. I think we're coming from a knowledge economy into a creative economy. The knowledge is all there. It's accessible in a couple of keystrokes. So the creative economy, I think, is really kind of the next step. What that looks like, I don't know exactly sure, but even the fundamentals of coding are going to be able to be prompted. We're not going to need to necessarily know how to do that, but if we can do it creatively and smarter than a machine that's just doing the same thing over and over again, we're probably going to win. So what does it look like in terms of tools and that kind of stuff? I don't know exactly. I mean, we're also probably down a weird path, right? There's Pandora's box has been opened. So it'd be interesting to see, how AI evolves over the next year or two, because it's exponentially accelerating, right? So I don't know, but all I do know is that if we stay true to the idea of like humans buying from humans, and then if we make it easy for humans to buy things, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to help our clients, essentially reach their goals. But I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's a lot, that's for sure.
Okay. So I'm going to refer back to that video again. I know you don't know which one I'm on about at the moment. But anyway, in the video, do mention that over the next 5 years, your aim is to set the benchmark as a service company, but you had already achieved it by the time you recorded that that video. What is your current goal for the next 5 years? And are you on track to achieve it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a little bit behind for the next 5 years. I mean, 2030 is the next kind of like big point for us that we're trying to get to serving 500 entrepreneurs a year. Wow. And our vision is to create the gold standard in marketing that entrepreneurs can trust to grow their business. There's a lot of people that sell snake oil, not to say that they mean to, but like a lot of people that sell deliverables and don't necessarily like move the needle for clients. And like, if you think about entrepreneurs, they're the ones that put their houses on the line to hire people. They're the ones that literally put it all out there and risk everything in order to make it so that we can, hire our friends and families and support our communities and, sponsor the hospital and the local soccer team and that kind of stuff. So like, them spending 40 grand and wasting it and it not moving the needle for their business it's not good for the economy, right? If you really do it from like a macro perspective, if you have, 1,000 entrepreneurs all wasting $40,000, that's a pretty big drain on a community or an economy's ability to like be fruitful. So yeah, I mean, that gold standard is something that we definitely strive towards every day, and we're building tools in our technologies to make it so that we can show them with data and specificity what's working, how it's working, and how they stack up next to their peers. It's also why we're niching into, more like smaller and smaller audiences, because if you have like, for example, we have almost 30 landscaping clients across Canada and the US. Having that many clients that are similar, it's very easy for us to see who's best in class and who's not. We can also understand their business better, because like we can understand things around maybe what their salary should look like as a payroll expense, as a percentage of their overall income statement. We can have more in-depth insights to make it so they can run their businesses better. And so that's the approach we want to take. And if we bring that kind of business acumen to the entrepreneur, they're running their own business, and odds are it's one, maybe two businesses in their career they're going to run. But if we're able to like expose them to 30 or 50 of a very similar type of business and use our insights, because we work with all of them, to make them better, well, then we become very sticky. Because like one of the things, our whole philosophy is, if you want to make $1 million, you got to serve $1 million. So how can we serve our clients really, really well to make it so they never want to leave and they love us for what we do? And that's kind of like the whole approach, and just obsess about our customer.
Rob, you say there about the landscape industry as well. Obviously, the more you work in one industry, the more clients you get, the better knowledge you get, and the better you can serve your customers, you're saying. With that, what is your personal favorite industry to work with, and why?
For me, I mean, I'm an intuitive problem solver. I like working with entrepreneurs. I just think that they're a cool, crazy breed of people that just do crazy shit and don't necessarily care too much about safety. They always bet on potential. So I mean, I'm pretty industry agnostic personally. But I have a crush on entrepreneurs. So that would be the one thing. And then, from a business perspective, trying to be smart with regard to what our team can do to bring value. I could probably see very clearly how to, help a bunch of entrepreneurs. But if we can't systematically make it work inside our company, then I'll be involved with everything. And I don't want that. But yeah, so from an industry perspective, I don't think there's one specifically that jumps out. I just think entrepreneurs are crazy, and I like hanging out with them.
Tell me, we'll talk a little bit more about entrepreneurs here. So what are the unique challenges and difficulties you have encountered or regularly encounter when you're working with entrepreneurs? Because you're saying there, and they are a unique breed of people. Not everyone could be an entrepreneur. What has been the difficulties that you've faced, or the most kind of common difficulty you faced with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes in different gaps. Like the biggest thing successful entrepreneurs know is that they have to grow themselves to grow their companies. So their leadership level is what's going to, rise up their business. And so you see a lot of entrepreneurs say under $1 million, like 1% of businesses get over $1 million, right? So a lot of businesses that are say $600,000, $900,000 in revenue, it's usually the entrepreneur doing everything. They're selling it, they're quoting it, they're doing the work, they're invoicing it. They might have a small team, but they won't let go, and they're like kind of stuck on everything having to be done exactly the way they do them, which has got some merit to it, but at the end of the day, it can be limiting. Whereas I find entrepreneurs between like $1 and $2.5 million are like, they've built a bit of a team. They still have pretty solid controls over what's going on. They're not necessarily ready to let someone else lead the ship. Somebody over 5 million is definitely cool with letting someone else lead, and someone over 10 million's almost made themselves redundant. And now they get to be truly like a CEO or visionary inside a company. But all the way through the whole thing, it's about understanding what's going on between their ears and taking full responsibility of what's going on in their business, because at the end of the day, it all ends with the entrepreneur, starts and ends with the entrepreneur. So there was a book I read called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John C. Maxwell, and there's a law in it called the Law of the Mirror. And it essentially says that things happen in your organization for one of two reasons. One, you're modeling it, saying it's okay because I'm doing it, so you can do it. Or two, you're accepting it, meaning that you don't like it, but you're not doing anything about it. That's the two reasons something happens inside a company from an entrepreneur leader perspective. So then if you take that to be true, everything is because of you. And then once you realize that the success or failure of your business is essentially your fault, you really kind of take ownership of how can you grow yourself as a leader. I think that's the biggest thing. Like if I could get all the entrepreneurs in the world to just study themselves, become more aware, look to serve more people, be service-minded, I think they'd inspire a lot more and grow their business a lot faster. And I think the best entrepreneurs do that.
You work with obviously these entrepreneurs and you get to see their business and their world from the outside. You get to look at it a little bit more, I guess, less emotional, more logical when you're looking and working these guys and girls. What separates you as an entrepreneur from the entrepreneurs you work with? What do you know that you have got or haven't got, which they have got or haven't got?
Well, I think a lot of them have what we have. I just think one of the things that we have as an organization, and myself personally, as somebody who's been doing it for 16 years, is the ability to synthesize what's going on from a revenue model perspective very quickly. I think a lot of people also have this. It's weird, right? When if you can really simplify this idea down. A lot of organizations don't take a niche, so they have a very I got something for everybody type of perspective. So the positioning behind that niche is very difficult because there's no niche. So then because of that, when they go to talk about their business, but to people, they only talk about their business and what they've done. So like, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is how much experience we have. But what people don't really understand is that no one gives a shit. Like, no one cares. People care about two things and two things alone: solving their problems and accomplishing their goals. So if you can flip the whole narrative of an organization to be around how to help people solve their problems and accomplish their goals, and the more specific you get, the more you resonate. Because if I'm talking to landscape entrepreneurs right now about how they can grow without having to hire more staff, that resonates because they can't find staff, but they want to grow. But I know that because it's about them and their problems and their goals. That niche then creates a good position where we stand out a little bit more. I just help people do that again and again and again and again and again. It takes a bit of time, I think, for people to understand positioning. It took us a long time to figure it out. So we just, what they say, the difference between an instructor and a student, right? It's just one class. So hopefully we're just one class ahead of our clients is kind of what we're trying to make happen.
Tell me, if I was to say to you, I want you to think of the best entrepreneur that you've worked with. Describe that entrepreneur for me. Don't obviously say names, don't need to, but I want to know what kind of qualities did they have? What kind of outlook on business did they have, which has helped you in your journey as well?
They think big. They're not limited by, their self-limiting beliefs are limited themselves. Like they think bigger than the average bear. Someone, like one entrepreneur might be like, hey, I'm going to buy a piece of real estate, or maybe in their house, they're going to buy a rental property or whatever. Another one's like, hey, I'm going to build an apartment building. It's just the mindset of thinking big and thinking what's possible, I think, is a big part of it. Ridiculous discipline, like unwavering rigor and discipline towards accomplishing a goal, and lifelong learners. They're just, they can't stop developing themselves, mastering their craft. So I think you put think big with discipline and learner together, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody who's pretty awesome as an entrepreneur.
So for our listeners that are listening to this, either currently just starting out in their startup career or thinking about doing it, if they haven't got that discipline, if they haven't got that ability to think big, how do they gain those kind of skills to be successful in your eyes of the entrepreneur? How do they do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first things first is talk to customers. Like a lot of times we'll speak to startups, and they'll have these great ideas of what they want to do, what they want to develop, what they want to build. But they do so in this vacuum without talking to people that might pay for it. And so, start talking to customers regardless, because who cares how big you can think? If no one wants to buy your stuff, there's no business. But I just can't. There's just so many people that build stuff without talking to customers, and that fails miserably. But that's okay. They got to give her. But it is lifelong learning, though. I mean, if you don't want to learn on your own and be a self-directed learner, yeah, you're gonna have a tough go. The world changes quickly. You got to learn about yourself. You got to learn about your people. You got to learn about your customers. You got to learn about your industry. You got to learn about your competition. Like, there's a lot that needs to be learned. So I'd say that you got to start somewhere, and you might as well start picking up some books, because there's a lot of other smarter people than me that have written them, and we can learn from. So I honestly think that the study and the instability of habit, like discipline's easy when it's habit. Discipline is not easy when it's not habit. I also find accountability with others helpful for myself. Like, it's really easy for me to miss a meeting that I booked for myself. For me, it's very difficult for me to miss a meeting I booked with somebody else. So sometimes you need people around you to hold yourself accountable. So a partner might be good to starting a company. I mean, those are just a couple of tips. But I mean, if you're not willing to learn, then we're going to run past you pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Tell me though, Rob, so you're talking about books. This is something that, again, I noticed in the video, and it actually is something you've got in your background, quite a few books. If you were to choose your favorite book, which you've learned the most of, which you've used in your journey the most, which would it be and why?
Different books for different areas of the life. But if I had to say, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, I think is probably the most impactful. When I read that book, it felt like it was kicking me in the nuts. It was hard. It hurt.
Is it real that you read more than once?
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely read it more than once. Yeah, I think it's just a very eye-opening read with regard to self-awareness and leadership development, because everything rises and falls on leadership. You can have a great product, great team. If you're a bad leader, the team's going to leave and the product's going to suffer. So, getting a sense of like who you want to be as a leader, understanding what kind of leadership style is good for you, understanding your blind spots, becoming very self-aware. I think that's a really good first step.
In terms of marketing and marketing strategies, do the requirements and approaches that you have to use, do they significantly differ from kind of country to country? Does Canada have its own kind of style? Does another country have its own kind of style? Or is it marketing a universal language and always will be?
Yeah, I think it's a universal language with some nuance, though. I think there's accents, as you go from country to country and culture to culture, right? Like, I can't say what it's like to market something in Japan, so I don't want to say it's the same. But I do know that at its essence, human beings make decisions emotionally. Like, that's neuroscience. Our limbic brain is responsible for decision making and emotion. So that I don't think really changes from country to country or culture to culture. How you invoke those emotions and what resonates with people in different cultures, I think is going to change. I think the fundamentals of trying to understand what drives someone emotionally and then making that a big part of like how you approach what you're trying to get people to be a part of is really important. So I think it's universal with some accent.
Rob, 16 years we're talking about for Intrigue here. What do you wish you knew at the beginning, which you now know but didn't know back then, which would have really helped you out?
There's a lot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, inspect what you expect. Letting go doesn't mean not looking at it. So I think that's something I wish I had known then that I know now, especially as you start to grow and your team gets bigger. And simplifying how you look at how a business operates. I wish I had known the 5 key levers that make our business tick 10 years ago because we would have focused on just those instead of, 35 different levers who knows which one actually makes any impact. But I mean, there's a ton. So, if there was one thing that I know now, I wish I had known then, you can't do it by yourself.
Sure. Nice. Tell me that you can't do it about yourself. Let's talk about your team a little bit. How big is the team now?
30-ish full-time and maybe like 10, 12 subcontractors that get used at various degrees.
How do you find the intrigue person? So you were saying that you need someone that can follow the same values and wanting to work with entrepreneurs. How do you find that?
So there's two things. We call it the SMART method and the Fight Club approach to recruiting. So we use the strategic marketing approach to recruiting talent. So we essentially use the same kind of like buyer journey or funnel development that you'd use to find customers, to find team members. So we own a list because we've built it over time, an email list of, call it 2,500 candidates that have applied to our organization over the last 10 years. And if we ever need to, reach out because there's an opening or an opportunity, then we can go direct to an inbox instead of having to land on an Indeed or a LinkedIn as an example. So build an asset when it comes to recruiting, super important. And if you go to our website, you'll see that like we have a bit of a Fight Club approach. Like, we're not here trying to recruit anybody. We're trying to recruit very specific people that believe in leadership, that believe in self-development. And so we usually start our recruitment with like, you probably don't want to work here. This is only for A players. It's only for the best. So if you're not the best, don't even bother. There's Ernest Shackleton. Have you heard of the story? The sailor it was first sailor that went to Antarctica. I'll pull it up for you quick. The Shackleton. So he was a sailor and he was looking to recruit sailors to go down to Antarctica. And he wrote a job posting and put it in like the town square or whatever. And it read, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. 6 people showed up.
Uh-huh.
And what do you think those 6 people were like?
Well, it's like him, no?
Hard as nails, man. Like, they made it. They survived. They got stranded on ice. They had to use a lifeboat to get to South America, and eventually they got back. I think it was out of England. I think a lot of times we get caught up in like, check out the perks and, look at the benefits, and we pay, industry best wages and work for us. I think the equivalent would have been like, hey, we're going to have fresh fruit on our ship and you have a really friendly captain and it's going to be a lot of fun to be on the ocean. Like, that doesn't necessarily get the type of people that you need. So we have a culture of accountability and growth. And so we really look to try to find people that believe in those things. We don't look at resumes out of the gate. We only look at the question, why do you want to work at Intrigue? If that answer is good, then we'll look at everything else. I think a lot of people still sift through resumes. Resumes are a false document that makes cashiers look like they're bookkeepers. So like, I think people need to get off that old school approach and then test the work. A lot of times for us, actually in every role, we give somebody an opportunity, a candidate an opportunity if they're, close to getting an offer to just do the work that we're looking to do, whether it's, it's a case study or whether they come into the office or they do something hybrid or remote. Give them a chance to get a taste of what it's going to be like working here, the work that they're going to do, the team they're going to be with, and look at that fact that if we get this wrong for a candidate's perspective, it's way more impactful for them than it is for us. Our company's going to move on. We're fine. Yeah, it's going to cost them money. Turnover is expensive, but their career is going to be potentially set back. And so let's get really clear on like what it is we're trying to accomplish. Be honest about where we're going to go and what we're good at and what we're not, and then see if we can find a fit that's going to make them successful. I also believe that there is I in team. Teams are made up of individuals, and the individual's goals are actually more important than the company's goals, because if they line up with what the company can do, the company can be a platform to help them be successful in life. That is a recipe for long-term employment and a really, really cool career development opportunity.
Amazing. I've just seen my favorite part of this interview now for the headlines of this article that we're going to write. Perfect. Tell me, Rob, last question for you. If you want what would you like people listening to this podcast to take away from today's conversation with you? What do you want their lasting memory to be about what you're doing at Intrigue?
Well, I mean, there's 2 things. One thing is, as a leader, just be mindful that the organizational environment that you're going to create is going to have a big impact on a lot of people. So take some responsibility with the fact that like we can, as leaders, make people go home energized or make people go home deflated. We can stress people out or we can make them better people. I think that's a pretty important thing leaders need to recognize, that they have that power, because if they don't recognize it, odds are people are going to go home deflated, unenergized. They're not going to be having a great time. So it's a bit of a responsibility, but it's also a lot of fun if you do it right. And then the other thing is, don't pay marketing companies retainers, for the love of God. Make sure you know where your money's going.
Amazing. Thank you very much, guys. Rob Murray, CEO and co-founder of Intrigue. Rob, great to speak to you. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this, Matt. I appreciate it, man.